So I needed to make massive changes, which equated to decisions to take a stand for myself. I was playing too small. And some of you continue to play too small with your marketing, with your sales. You're too afraid to tell your clients to pull the trigger. Welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. If you're on board with me, go ahead and check in. Thank you again for joining me. With so much to do, I do thank you for your time, and I'm hoping that today's conversation will make you think about your own actions, will make you think about your business, your family, yourself, your health, everything, right? And that's the point of this Mindset Mastery every week, is just to go ahead and pivot and make moves that from the things that either inspire us or make us think in a different perspective. And something happened this weekend that I never thought I would tell my daughters. But before I tell that story, I want to go back to how I was raised over the years. Right, my parents were all about work ethic. It's all about if you commit to something, no matter what, you're going to deliver. Right, and I think that's taken me very far in my career, in everything that I've done. But I've also found things that I needed to pivot on, things that I committed to that I had to stop committing to. And this was ingrained early on, right? You're committed to go to school. You're going to go no matter what. If you're sick, it doesn't matter. If you're not feeling well, if you're throwing up, get out of your system and you're going to school. And that went on with our franchise. We bought a franchise when I was 25 or 26 years old, okay? And we were pretty thrilled about buying a UPS store franchise. We put a lot of money into it. We got a small business loan, and we felt very accomplished at that time. We're thinking, wow. And we got a lot of people, giving us compliments too. I can't believe at your age, you own a UPS store. So it made us feel really, really good. Until we realized that the franchise we were bleeding, right? We were bleeding in expenses to a point where we were not profitable, losing $30,000-$40,000 every month. And it was rough, right? And I was hanging on to that because that was my mindset. I'm going to make this work. Regardless of the consequences, regardless of the aftermath, I am going to make this work. I committed to this. And it brought on a lot of other problems, not only financially, it brought on problems in our marriage, right? Because Carla was the type of person that says, hey, we gotta throw in the towel. We gotta stop. And all I was thinking about it was all the money that I invested into this franchise, right? My life savings, I put it all into there. I even mortgaged my house. I mean, I put everything, cash and credit. We did everything to make this work. And when I realized that it was a losing proposition, I didn't immediately make the decision. I hung on to that, and I only made things worse, right? Because now my thought process was, well, I committed. I at least want to be able to make what I put into it. And so I won't sell unless it's for this price. There goes another 2 months, another 6 months, and we're like going through all our finances, right? Everything was revolved around this store. And finally, when I came into my senses, which was many months later, we were in the hole, even in a deeper financial situation. And I could have stopped this because everything about me told me just cut the ties. But there was just so much wiring within me that stated, you just don't quit. You just don't do things to quit. If I start something, I'm going to finish it. And this is something that I've ingrained into my daughters for a very long time. I mean, they've seen us. And for the most part, that's how we still operate. But there's another level to this that we're now aware of. But before I get into that, that's the same kind of mindset that we went into our marriage with. We knew that our marriage wasn't working the way it had been functioning for the last 10 years. We knew that. Like year 10 for our marriage, at least in my perspective, Carla says something around year 7, year 6. It became intolerable. It was no longer happy. Did we have happy moments during that time? Yeah, I can show you on photos that we had happy but happy moments, right? Most of the time it was turmoil. Most of the times it was arguments. Most of the times it was avoiding each other in our household. So the good times, more of the good times turned more to the bad times. So there was more bad times than there was good. But Just like my UPS store, we liked the fact that people were inspired. Wow, you have this store. And we didn't want to quit on our marriage, right? We had 10 years into this, 7 years into it. What are people going to say if we quit on our marriage? We both knew for a long time it wasn't working. We both knew our franchise wasn't working, but what others thought was always prevalent. And that's the only reason why I didn't quit, right? I don't want people to think that I failed. And most people don't quit on certain items because they don't want others to be disappointed. The very people that have nothing to do with our finances, nothing to do with our day-to-day operation or our decisions that we make. They have nothing to do with the bills you can't pay. They have nothing to do with the anguish you go to sleep with and the anxieties and the stressors. But yet they become the forefront of our thought processes. So I had to learn how to quit. I had to learn how to quit on the things that just no longer work. And people are like, wow, AZ, how were you able to bounce back with your marriage? How were you able to bounce back in your career, in your business? Like you were in financial ruin. I had to learn something that I just didn't necessarily learn growing up. I had to quit. I had to quit on the things that were no longer working, the things that brought me anguish and heartache, that made me stress every night, that gave me anxiety, that no longer became a passion but a burden. We had to quit on that. Our marriage was a burden the way it was in its form, in its current, in the form that it was in. It was a burden to both of us. The business was a burden, a financial burden. It was torture. It was torment every single day. And many of you are wired the same way. You just don't quit. So that's why you're still in a relationship that you know doesn't work. You're still in there because others may say something. What is this person going to say? What are other family members going to say? And friends. So you stick to a marriage that's not working. Just like Carla and I stuck to a marriage that wasn't working. And we lost ourselves in that space. Same reason the UPS store. We hung on to that for way too long. What are others going to say? It's not working. So day in, day out, we were on this constant battle, this uphill battle of just trying to make sense of all this craziness, of this madness, of this heartache. Until we called it quits. And we knew that moving forward, things just had to change. And it just so happens that we found our way back together, Carla and I. But we had to quit the madness. We had to quit the chaos of what we had built. And if you start thinking about your business, and there are many things that are not working, and at some point you have to take a stand for yourself and you say, I got to quit the way I'm operating. You got to quit being broke. Quit being scared. Quit being afraid to pull the trigger on certain decisions. And taking a stand and saying, what is the consequences of being in this place? I know I hated being broke. So I needed to make massive changes, which equated to decisions to take a stand for myself. I was playing too small. And some of you continue to play too small with your marketing, with your sales. You're too afraid to tell your clients to pull the trigger. So you remain in this place that no longer works for you, being broke, being stressed out. And we have to determine what's causing all this anguish, what's causing all this torment and this grief. And I've raised my daughter over the years to think the same way. And there was a situation that's been in the making here for the last few weeks, since the start of the volleyball season. My daughter Abigail quit. And I'll tell you why. It was causing all the things that make us stay in certain things just because we're committed. Right? Because we said we were going to stick around. Regardless of how bad it gets. Regardless of how unhappy you are, because you committed, you're going to stay there. And I had to pivot on this. This is a lesson I've learned many times over, but yet I was telling my daughter, you're going to work through it. You're going to continue to show up powerfully every day. You're going to work outside of the parameters of practice. But yet nothing was changing. And when nothing changes, decisions need to be made. So we were sitting at this game, and there was just something about this game that just sent me over the edge. My daughter was on the sidelines, and this was causing her already enough stress, right? She's been playing since she was like 8, 9 years old. She was a star high school player. She was coming off her best season. She's on a new team. And it's only a matter of time before you work your way up to certain things, right? That it is, unless you realize that the environment is no longer healthy. That regardless of what you do, nothing's going to change. But you at least have to try. I'm not saying just quit on your relationships. What I'm saying, something needs to change. And that's always on the foundation of taking a stand for yourself first and foremost. There's relationships that you're in. And I'm not just saying marriage or personal. I'm talking about family, extended family, friends. That every time you're around that environment, it gives you that anxiety. You're no longer working within the parameters of your greatness. In fact, it makes you question everything about yourself. And that's where Abigail was at. She knows she's good, but now she was questioning herself because she hardly got any playtime. And she wasn't one of those players that was pouting on the sidelines. I taught her better than that. I said, you work hard. She wasn't one of those players that was going to go out and complain. Do you have conversations with the coach? Yeah, absolutely. How can I get better? How can I improve? So she had those conversations over and over again. And I'm not one of those parents that are going to go and complain to the coach, say, why aren't you playing my daughter? I'm not going to do that. So this particular game, she's sitting there, and our team was up 7 points. And then it was mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. Not one time did the coach turned to my daughter and say, okay, you're in. And I'm frustrated. The parents are frustrated. Some of these players have gotten used to their role. They're the starters, they're going to stay there regardless. They lose that game. Abigail comes in the second game. Not saying that she was the reason why they won. What I'm saying is sometimes you just have to change things. And they won that game. Third game, they go back to the same old rotation. And again, they lose. But this time was different. You see, I took her to Salt Lake City. She got her playtime. And when she was in there, she played her game. But yet it was never reinforced with her going back in. It was this reset that the coach had. And again, I'm not trying to blame anyone. And trust me, I might be biased in the way I'm approaching this. Right? I may not come from an impartial third party. But this is the first time I think that Abigail and I were on the same page. I felt her frustration. I've never been so frustrated in a game. And I've sat on the sidelines many times. And I'll tell her, you just get better, babe. You just get better. But regardless of what you do, it may not be good enough. It makes you feel like you're not good enough. No matter how much you try to change in your relationship, it may never change. But you're not stuck. And you have choices. And the last thing I wanted to teach my daughter was, go ahead and give up your own happiness, live in misery, live in discontent because you gave your word. We gave it more than a number of times. So right after that game, I even text Carla. I'm like, I'm livid. I've never been in that situation where I see so much dysfunction, where it's breaking down my daughter. And she's not an emotional girl. And I'm texting Carla. And I'm cussing up a storm. I'm just so frustrated with this. And it seemed like we all came to a consensus without even saying it. As soon as the game was over after they lost, Abigail goes and tells me, Dad, and I know she was afraid. She says, I'm done. I said, we're done. You know, having the courage to quit is as honorable as continuing on a commitment. Because when you continue on something that goes against your own integrity, that's counterproductive to anything you ever want to do in life. A commitment's your word, and I get it. But not at the cost of your personal integrity, where people question your worth. This never crossed our minds. In fact, I think I was on the opposite end. We would hear about girls quitting for years. And our take was like, that would never happen to us. That's never going to happen to us. And here we are at that crossroad. But we had to reprioritize things. What's good for her at 17? What's good for us? Finally, what's good for the team? But when we prioritize ourselves first and foremost, we start seeing the path to the next decisions. She comes off the court, and we were thinking the same thing. This is our last day with this club. That's it. No more are we taking this with us. No more, feeling that anxiety right before practice. No more all this time invested and energy to something that's not paying any returns. My business wasn't paying any returns. My marriage wasn't paying any returns. This game, volleyball game, wasn't paying any returns for Abigail. Enough was enough. So we did, and we made a decision that we never thought we would do. So we were this close of just walking away at that point. But we were going to stick it through. So we stuck it through all day long. Some things happened throughout the game that put her in a position where she started all the games at this point. It's always like when you're about to make a decision, it seems like something just changes, right? Have you ever been in that situation? When you're about to quit your job, they give you a promotion. When you're about to walk away from one industry as a contractor, all of a sudden there's a big project that just suddenly presented itself. And you're like, ooh, maybe it wasn't that bad. All of a sudden, when you're about to call it quits, you go to this glorious vacation and you're like, ooh, maybe being in this relationship is not that bad. Right? Just to keep you there. So again, this opportunity presented itself. Like, there was an injury that happened. All of a sudden, Abigail's in the game, all games. Like, she got the opportunity. She's been seeking her entire, since the season started. Now she's on the court. And she's playing. And she's killing it. Her team's like, oh, you're doing so good. Well, no. I'm thinking to myself, no shit. She's been playing, she was 8 years old. Of course she's good. She just never got the opportunity. She was suppressed. So she's playing. She had her best games. She was getting kills, passes. She was on her game. I'm thinking to myself, oh man, I wonder if she's going to change her mind. And then she says something that I was just so proud of. She comes off the court sweating, drinking her water. And she's like, Dad, help me write the email to coach. It made me smile. Because she looked beyond the shiny lights. She looked beyond the short-term satisfaction. And she looked, what is tomorrow going to look like? And she wasn't prepared to be in that space ever again. And I tell her, babe, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. You made a decision. And I know this decision is going to be the foundation for many other decisions you make down the road. If it causes your own demise, you quit. If it causes you to question yourself, you go somewhere else. Who cares about the chirps? Who cares what everybody else thinks? You focus on what Mom always says, on happy. And I'm so happy that she went out like a champ. She went out playing her best games ever. When she was given the opportunity, she rose like she did every time. But the people around her just didn't see the value. Like that saying goes, right? You don't miss it until it's gone. So she emails the coach, and the coach is like, oh my God, I didn't know this was even a problem. I'm thinking to myself, you think having a kid sit on the sideline is not a problem? Especially when she shows up like a beast every day? I'm not saying give it to her. I'm saying if she's earned an opportunity, you give it to her. And now she's dealing with what are others going to say, of course. But this is the kind of decisions we need to make. So back to the conversation. If you're tired of being broke, if you're tired of not having a predictable income, if it's causing you anguish, what kind of stand are you prepared to make for yourself? Marketing is an attitude. Sales is your livelihood. And you got to take a stand for your business. You got to take a stand in your relationships. You got to take a stand as a parent. And I'm so proud of this little girl. She's not a quitter. She's not. But she finally understood what it means to prioritize yourself. And I don't want her to be in the situations where we don't learn that lesson until we're 30, 40, 50 years old. She's ahead of the game. I didn't raise no quitter. But she just had to move on. And sometimes when we've been in a place so long, we just get used to it. And I'm asking you to move on. Move on from the things that bring you that anguish, that despair, that make you anxious. Being broke made me anxious. Not having my systems in place made me real broke. I was constantly in this place of scarcity. So my question to you is, where do you need to quit? Where do you need to quit? And what is it going to take you to make that decision? It's going to open you up to new opportunities. And I see that already for Abigail. New opportunities are on the horizon. But she didn't understand. She's priority number one. And so are you. You need to take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally. And if there's things that are attacking that, it's attacking your integrity. And that's the way you got to look at it. They're attacking you personally. Cultivate those environments that are going to lift you up. Now make you question yourself on a daily. So yes, quit. Carla and I quit on our relationship. And guess what? We found a new one together, which is amazing. And I'm glad we were able to find ourselves all the way back. But we had to leave that toxic environment, our past. We were kids when we met. We're adults now. I'm a man. She's a woman. Respect that. Respect the people that we've become. And when we saw from that perspective, all new opportunities came about. But if it's a constant, you're going to lose yourself. And Abigail almost lost herself to the point where you don't know your own self-worth. You don't know even how to make a decision to take a stand for yourself. So it's that time to start breaking those shackles of the things that are holding us back and start making decisions that will propel you forward. Guys, that's all I got for you today. I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.